Michael, putting Nassar, the perpetrator, just aside for a moment, how strong is the case against USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University?
Well, Maggie, it remains to be seen how strong the evidence is, but certainly the allegation that the university and the athletic organizations involved didn't take adequate steps to make sure that these young women were protected from someone who's now accused of being a pedophile. And it's very important that when courts review the evidence, that they look at what steps were taken. Were reasonable steps taken? Were the steps taken in compliance with Title IX, for example? Was enough resources deployed to make sure that witnesses were interviewed in a way where they could speak candidly? There are a series of steps involved, and it remains to be seen whether or not the defendants took any or all of them.
Who could be held responsible for allowing this to happen for, Michael, this is going back now 20 years in some cases?
That's right. So there's always the possibility that the statute of limitations involved could limit the extent of time in which there can be recovery on a civil lawsuit. But setting that aside, that issue aside for a moment, certainly any athletic organization that retained Dr. Nassar and that presumably checked his references, that interviewed him, that periodically reviewed his work, and as part of that review, making sure that his patients were treated well. Were any of these steps taken? We don't know yet, but it certainly could turn out that not enough steps were taken to make sure that he was being monitored. Just because he's a doctor, I think sometimes we think, well, doctors, they know what they're doing. We're just going to let them do whatever they're doing. But there were children in this case, and extra duties are necessary to make sure that there aren't any improprieties. We know that this has happened in the past in other contexts. It's incumbent upon any entity that retained him to work with these young women, girls at the time, make sure that they took the steps to ensure their safety.
Absolutely. When you look at Michigan State, though, can't help but think about what happened at Penn State with the football program and the severe penalties that resulted for the school. What is on the line for Michigan State?
Well, Michigan State certainly has civil liability on the line, where if these lawsuits play out in a way that shows liability, they could be on the hook for millions, maybe even tens of millions of dollars, depending upon the number of women that are involved. It wouldn't surprise me if a settlement is reached at some point if the university concludes that they may have erred along the way. Often cases like these end in settlements, and Penn State ended in a settlement. There's always, of course, the possibility of the NCAA looking into it. Were there any athletic administration issues that were potentially raised as a source of concern? Now, the NCAA, some would say, overstepped its grounds with Penn State, and they encountered legal issues before judges over that issue. But I'm sure the NCAA is at least monitoring the extent to which the athletic administration acted properly.